Yeah, so the book of Revelation is obviously full of all kinds of interpretive issues, and one of the biggest ones of all is what's Babylon? Like, which city is it? Because it's obviously not Babylon of old Sumerian origin, the Old Testament Babylon. Scholars recognize it's not. And actually, there are those who say, though, that it is the Old Testament Babylon that's going to come back one day, like in Iraq or something like that. But the two main views you most often see with commentators are that when John is talking about Babylon here, he's talking about, well, if you go back earlier in the book in chapter 17, you'll see Babylon is mentioned as a woman riding on a beast with seven heads. And these seven heads then are often seen as being seven hills, and Rome is often referred to as a city that was built on seven hills, the city on seven hills. Also, the wicked Babylon here in Revelation is described as an economic powerhouse in chapter 18. But in 17 as well, it talks about how the seven hills actually represent seven different kings, five of which are dead, one that's living, and one that will be. All this points to the fact that many interpreters will take Babylon as a reference to the empire that was in control, or the city that was in control in John's day, and that was Rome. And if the whole book starts off with this idea that John's writing to churches to encourage them in difficult times, and if the way he's encouraging them is simply by saying, Jesus Christ, or rather God through Jesus, will defeat the powers that currently cause you to suffer, then it makes sense that they would have probably heard Babylon as a reference to the Roman Empire, and particularly to the city of Rome. However, there are also those who say that the city on seven hills could be Jerusalem, because Jerusalem is actually built on hills, and there are at least seven of them. And many people would point to Jerusalem and say Jerusalem's the city built on seven hills, because Jerusalem is seen as being an apostate prostitute in the book of Revelation. So really it's kind of open to both of those, but the gist of it is the same either way, and that is that this whole book is geared towards saying God through Christ wins against the powers that fight against him. And those powers are represented whether by Jerusalem or Rome as the world powers located essentially in one great city that receives destruction in chapter 19. So the point's the same either way, that God's going to win out over the world powers. Whether or not Babylon represents Rome or represents Jerusalem is kind of up in the air, really. A lot of debate on that, but in either case, the meaning's still the same.